Why the treasures of Villa Sostaga? Why my wine e-commerce? The first answer I want to give you is because the various existing wine e-commerce stores are banally wine supermarkets, where they only offer, but above all, highlight for the purpose of inducing you to buy what they are most comfortable selling. They induce you by means of discounts to buy what they themselves have bought at a discount from the winemakers. Does the doubt don't occur you that if they are discounted, perhaps it's because they do not sell? And the most absurd thing is that these mega wine supermarkets lose tens of millions of euros every year. In reality and sincerity, there is also a much deeper but equally simple answer. Wine is a fascinating, bewitching, and living creature, whose best spirits are born out of love. At the heart of my project and my idea of wine e-commerce, there are the small winemakers and all the love that the winemakers have for their land, their vineyards, and their wines. It was not buying or even drinking wine that I fell madly in love with wine. Of course, I've always liked it. I'm Italian. How could it be otherwise? It was when I started traveling to discover what was behind a bottle of wine that I really began to fall in love with it. I have had the joy, the fortune, and the privilege of meeting people, for example, like Cristina and Diego di Cantrina, independent winemakers, artists of the enology, who here on Lake Garda have been able to achieve winemaking excellence of absolute value, for example, with their Nepomuceno or il Sole di Dario. And not only that, and I have met characters bordering on madness, health me madness of course, like Claudio Mariotto, who gave my wife a tour of his vineyards, on the condition, however, that she was barefoot out, of respect for the soil of his vineyards. I visited science fiction cellars like Cantina Limburg, which more than a wine cellar is like the spectre of James Bond films, literally carved out of the rock. As is Cantina dei Produttori del Barbaresco, an extraordinary example of how cooperation between different winemakers can yield wines, whose excellence is in the forefront of the world's greatest wines, and I had the honor of visiting many others. There is one thing I want to make clear to you. I am by no means an admirer of so-called natural wines, simply because natural wine doesn't exist. Wine in nature doesn't exist. Wines undoubtedly originate from a product of the earth, of nature, in example, bunches of grapes. But it's only thanks to the millennial creativity of man, who has been engaged in the production of wine since its beginnings, that wine can be born. There is no wine without man, and that's why I've placed the small winemakers at the center of my wine e-commerce idea. Men and women who dedicate their lives to the fruits of their land, taking care of their vineyards every day, in every season. Fragile creatures in need of infinite care and unconditional love, so that their land can offer us their best fruits, enhancing their scents and flavors, offering us sensory and taste experiences that no other drink in the world can even remotely compare to the experience of a great bottle of wine. And what do I mean by great bottles of wine? It's difficult to describe it in words, because we are talking about emotions, therefore subjective values and susceptible to my mood, the climate, everything around me. And it's for the same reason that when my customers ask me, "What's your favorite bottle of wine?" I never know what to answer. I'm an omnivore. I love the great Italian Metodo Classico sparkling wines, as well as the champagne from our French cousins. I love the light reds, like the Alicante, the velvety, like Lacrima di Morro d'Alba, or spicy like Verduno Pelavergo or Schioppettino. How can I not mention another incredible character like Bressan? I love the Brunello di Montalcino. I adore the great Nebbiolos of the Langhe, in all their declinations, from the Langhe Nebbiolo to Barolo and Barbaresco. I'm a passionate lover of the Chiave Nasca. That's the local name for the great Nebbiolos of Valtellina. And what about white wines? It could be an endless list, but since I especially like to make it wired, I will tell you that I love the long-aging white wines, like for example the Gavi di Gavi, the Timorasso, of the previously mentioned Claudio Mariotto, and the Grand Master of Timorasso, Walter Massa. but I'm equally fond of the elegance and sobriety of the Prix Blanc de Morges de la Salle, an example of the extreme wines cultivated in the inaccessible mountains of the Valle d'Aosta, at an altitude of over 1,000 meters. And I equally adore the minerality of Sicilian wines that express all the variety of an arid, even volcanic land surrounded by the sea. But how can we forget, in all its forms and expressions of white or red wines, an area as enologically and not only extraordinary as the Amalfi Coast with its Furore and Ravello. But then there is also the Aglianico, the great Barolo of the south, which demands years and years, a yearning wait, a very long courtship in which to refine itself and offer itself to us with extraordinary power and also elegance. And the Tintiglia del Molise, the Bombino, the Lagarino Bianco. Carneade, who was it? Exclaimed Don Abbondio in Manzoni's novel Promessi Sposi. You cannot imagine how much it fills my heart with sadness that even Italians, most of course, still don't know what the quantity and above all the variety of indigenous grape varieties that Italy has to offer. An heritage that no other country in the world can boast of, not even remotely comparable to the vastness of more than 500 varieties of Italian autochthonous grape varieties, which account for about the half of all existing grape varieties in the world. Question: single vineyard or cuvée? Single vineyard wines have their charm, no doubt, but especially in the white wines, I developed a great and personal passion for cuvées. The blending of different grape varieties offered the winemaker the opportunity to express himself like an artist in front of a black canvas. Each cuvée is unique and inimitable. By now, I lost account of how many times I've exclaimed during the visits into my wine cellar here at the hotel and restaurant Villa Sostaga, "You cannot imagine how much life there is beyond Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc." So this is why Tesori di Villa Sostaga was born. Because I would like to take you by the hand one by one and personally accompany you on an extraordinary journey into the world of wine that I started to undertake 20 years ago. So please, search into my wine e-commerce like a truffle hunt. Go beyond your usual habits. Leave the comfort zone of "I like Merlot." Discover how extraordinary, vast and varied the world of wine is. And above all, drink for the pleasure of tasting a product of blood and sweat. Wine requires patience, time, a lot of time, care, everything that a fizzy drink can never offer you, as it slowly kills you with its obscene amounts of added refined sugar. And you know that in Italy, unlike France, it's forbidden to add sugar to our red and white wines, don't you? A small provocation, just invite you to drink wine with all the pleasure that a great bottle of wine can offer you, but also with a great respect for all those women and men who, working the land in the vineyard, tending the mast in their cellars, patiently waiting years before the fruit of all this enormous work reaches you, they work to offer you their wine. Behind every great man, there is a great woman, someone said. I can tell you that behind every great bottle of wine, there is a great winemaker, a human being, his history, his passion. In the same way, I Tesori di Villa Sostaga is the fruit of my passion. Cheers.